What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Culture Wave Media Network. It is I, Darian Scalamoni. I am here to discuss with you guys A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the newest HBO premium comedy drama. It's the first really Game of Thrones spin-off series with the comedic tone. There's a lot to discuss with this show. Second episode now out. I am solo for this record. Mostly because of, if you guys are on the East Coast, you may be aware of this already, but there was a massive snowstorm this past weekend, so it has been hard to get people in the studio. So I'm doing this one solo for now. Hopefully we're going to have some people back next week to discuss episode 3. I did talk to Sean and Vinny separately outside of this in a group chat, and I think we're all on the same page. We really enjoyed this episode. This was probably we all preferred this episode a bit more than we did the premiere, and there's a lot to kind of discuss with it, and it has a little bit of everything in it, which is why I think it's on the right foot, so to speak, going forward. So we discussed a lot last week in the episode in the discussion of the relationship between Sir Duncan and Egg and what that meant, and why for George R.R. Martin that had to be perfectly casted, why that relationship is so important. And we open up on Dunk and Egg in their first kind of moment of downtime where they're finally having discussions and they're kind of gearing up for the next day, preparing for this tournament. And you kind of start to see the chemistry kind of flow naturally between Peter Claffey and Dexter Ansell, the two lead actors that play Dunk and Egg. And it got me right into the episode. As soon as we started it, it wasn't as much of like some of the slapstick kind of humor that we saw in moments in the first episode. As I said, we see more of the comedic editing in this episode than like we did in the first one. And you get it pretty quickly because we get the juxtaposition of this relationship between Dunk and Egg to Dunk, again, being on this sort of crusade to try to tell the tales of the life of Sir Arlen, the guy that was basically his adoptive father. And we get some flashbacks of him helping out princes and lords in his own way. And of course, the big thing, literally and figuratively, that's been on everybody's minds coming off this episode is this ginormous prosthetic penis that Sir Arlen has. It's maybe the biggest penis in the history of television, even though Game of Thrones has done this now many a time. This dude has a complete hog on him. So this is a crazy scene. Makes you laugh out loud. It stays on Arlen for quite a while. And again, it provides this kind of this aside moment of just like, is it necessary? But it adds to the lore of the character and kind of gives us a little bit more of an understanding of who Arlen is too. When you start to see when he has this morning release and he's peeing and you see this giant gash on his arm that might have led to an infection that led to ultimately his death. But Dunk is on this quest again to kind of make people aware of what Arlen stood for and who he is and what he meant in his life and why he's important. And so not only do we get that kind of jumping us off in this episode, but we also get the introduction to a number of Targaryens in this episode. Finn Bennett is an actor that I talked about in last week's episode, who was an actor who was one of the stars of True Detective Season 4. Again, HBO brings him in to play Aryan Targaryen, but we also get introduced to Baelor Targaryen as well as Maekar Targaryen. Maekar is kind of a douche. He's also lost 2 sons. We're not sure if they're alive or if they're dead when we get introduced to his character, but Baelor represents the first time we kind of see a nicer Targaryen, at least on the onset, and he is aware of who these characters are from the beginning. And so Baelor is the hand of the king, and all 3 of the Targaryens that we're introduced to are all princes. And Baelor also kind of gives validity to what Sir Arlen had accomplished. And before he was kind of even a known entity, Arlen, he had knocked Baelor off his horse in a jousting match. And there's a great moment where you're starting to see the real what Arlen really was in Dunk's mind, where he believes that he had taken Baelor down more times and Baelor kind of corrects him. And with Dunk having this insecurity about him and not being a real knight and not being somebody of stature, you kind of see him kind of cower in the moment where he's proven wrong by Baelor, whether he actually is wrong or he's not. I'm sure we'll come to find that out. But this episode is a big one in terms of growth, because we have a 6-episode arc in this season, and within the second episode now we're already kind of getting to this point where Dunk needs to make some tough decisions. And coming from that moment where he gets introduced to the Targaryens and he kind of lays out why Arlen is important, why his word is important, why his stature is important, he also needs to get into this mindset of now getting ready for the tournament, and he has to ultimately get rid of something, or really someone that means a lot to him. And it's his own horse, Sweetfoot, who he has to wind up selling to get armor for the tournament. But at the same time, you're also seeing the juxtaposition of that, where Dunk is obviously caring for animals. You see when Arian arrives, he kind of just gets off his horse and dismisses him and treats the horse like shit, and Dunk really takes care of the horse, and he is able to kind of get through to the horse, really. And you see the sensitivity of his character. You see how it's a big leap for him to be this gentle giant to eventually become this unbelievable knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which I'm excited to kind of see how that builds over time, because Peter Claffey is doing a terrific job as the lead Sir Duncan the Tall. Other moments that stood out, we have a great scene with Dunk and the new Kingsguard, where, you know, you're kind of seeing those chinks in the armor a little bit for Duncan, of his stupidity and how he's kind of this affable kind of character that's kind of moping his way around getting through this situation that he's never been in before. And as he's doing this, as he's kind of figuring this stuff out, we see this great conversation with them. And then, of course, the tug of war with Baratheon. I'll just check in my notes really quick. Lyonel Baratheon. Daniel Ings. Again, he's my favorite character of the show so far. He's just this complete drunken fool, and he recruits Duncan, and Egg joins along for the ride as well for this giant tug of war to kind of prove supremacy. And it's in that moment Lyonel leaves the line, and Duncan puts his feet to the ground, puts his feet in the dirt, and just kind of rips forward. And you see this first real kind of leap of strength, and this garnering of strength from Duncan that he's going to require in order for him to kind of overcome the odds and win this giant tournament. So there's a lot to like in episode 2. The humor is great. There's great stakes. There's great kind of character building between Dunk and Egg and some of these other supporting characters now that hopefully we get a little bit more information on. But next week's episode 3, is already halfway through the season. I'm excited to take a look at that. And hopefully, like I said, we'll have Sean and Vinny on for a discussion with that. But this has just been me recapping some of the things that happened in the episode, some of the things I liked about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this mini kind of episode that I did by myself. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you're thinking thus far about A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Are you happy with the tone? What do you think about episode 1 compared to episode 2? Let's have a conversation in the comments. I'd love to kind of do that with you guys. Give this video a like if you guys can, and subscribe to us here at the Culture Wave Media Network. We're covering a bunch of other stuff on the channel. We've been covering stuff on the channel. We got shorts up. We're on social media. All that stuff is below me. It's also in the YouTube description. Looking forward to covering a lot of really great and exciting stuff for the rest of the year, and in January and February. And along that, I just got access to some screenings for Sundance Film Festival. I'm going to be watching some things over the weekend and then getting those reviews to you guys soon as well. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Just signing off, I'm Darian Scalamoni, and I'll see you guys next time.
This is the culture.